Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about inspiration, getting inspired, getting motivated, staying motivated. I hear from so many people who have trouble with this issue, and so I've brought together 12 different pieces of advice. And let's not waste any time, let's go ahead and get into it. The first one is this: check out other people's work, including work from fields other than your own, music, film, etc. Study it, learn from it, get inspired by it. This is number one for me, not just on this list, but in my own life. I definitely get inspired by looking at other people's work. Now, I know that for some people it can be sort of demotivating. They look at other people's work and they're like, oh, he's so much better, or she's so talented, and it somehow ends up crushing their dreams in a way. And I'm going to come back to that, hold that thought, because I've got a separate piece of advice relating to that. But I do think, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that looking at other people's work can give you fresh ideas, and kind of, especially if you get that feeling of, I could do that. I could do my version of this kind of a thing, That's definitely the way I feel very often when I see like a sci-fi movie, and I think, boy, what would my sci-fi movie look like? Or what if my comic book were a sci-fi comic, That kind of thing just always gets my creative juices flowing. There's nothing worse than staring at a blank sheet of paper and trying to do it all on your own. So I wanted to put front and center this idea of getting inspired by looking at other people's work. I'm going to quickly explain what I'm doing here. I'm doing a drawing of a chibi character. This is for this project that I've been working on, and I'm almost done with it, and hopefully I'll be able to sort of reveal a little more about it, what it is, in future videos. But for now, let's move on to number 2 here. Take a break from the thing you're working on and work on something else instead. I think sometimes, your brain gets tired of this one project, and that might be why you're getting blocked or you're feeling unmotivated. Maybe you just need a change of pace. I know I do that sometimes. And get away and try some other project. You never know, the other activity that you're working on could give you ideas that you bring back to that first activity. I think we all have this sort of idealized concept of, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work at it day and night until it's finished. And hats off to you if you can achieve that, but it's not necessary. There's nothing wrong with taking a break, getting away from it. And you always come back with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective on your own work. I think in a lot of ways it can be preferable to get away. You're going to see stuff that you couldn't see. You were like a little too close to it. And when you get away, you come back and it's like you have new eyes as you look at your own work. Number 3 here. If you're stuck, move back a couple steps in your process and take a different path. Now, true confession is this piece of advice is closely modeled off of a quotation by Margaret Atwood, and I'm just going to bring it out here and read it to you because I think it's really marvelous. Don't sit down in the middle of the woods. If you're lost in the plot or blocked, retrace your steps to where you went wrong. Then take the other road. Now, this is mostly about writing. She says lost in the plot. So if you're writing a story that has a plot, sometimes you can get stuck, and she gives you this idea. My favorite part of it, she says, don't sit down in the middle of the woods. This idea of actually being out in the woods and just giving up and sitting down and like, that's it. I'll never get out of here, and that's what it feels like, right? When you feel like you're making no progress, sometimes you just want to give up. And she's saying, no, retrace your steps. And I like that. Go back a little bit in your process to when it was going well. And consider the possibility that there's another path, there's another way forward. Anyway, I wanted to share that. It is probably a little more, related to writing than to anything else. But I could certainly understand someone working on a song, for example, and you get... you like this first part of the song, but the second part isn't working. Maybe you need to consider the possibility that this second part is not what the song needs. Go back to that first part and let it lead you somewhere else. Anyway, for whatever it is worth, that is the number 3 piece of advice. Here, number 4. The haters are wrong. Ignore them. What you're doing is good and worth putting out into the world. Especially today in the age of the internet, if you're getting your work out there, you will inevitably be criticized. You will get sometimes very harsh criticism. You will have people telling you that you have no talent, that you're worthless. And I'm here to just say they're wrong. You should continue doing what you're doing. Nobody is the absolute arbiter of taste who can say what is good and what it isn't. So much of it is a matter of opinion. And I guess this is just my general thing of don't let the critics get you down, whether in my case it would be like real critics, book critics or whatever, or just, these sort of amateur critics, the people on the internet who I feel sometimes elevate themselves by pushing other people down. There's legitimate criticism. There's constructive criticism. I'm not saying all criticism is bad and that you should ignore all criticism. Far from it. But certainly if someone's tearing you down or telling you to quit, don't listen to them. You should absolutely keep doing what you're doing. Number 5, when you have no ideas, take one person's idea and another person's idea and combine them. It can lead you to a new and original idea. This comes from my own life. My first story called Akiko, or Akiko, was really a mix between Star Wars and The Wizard of Oz. So I took 2 different pre-existing ideas and mixed them together. The Wizard of Oz part was the idea of a girl or a child leaving the real world and going off into some fantasy land. The Star Wars was the sort of location of the story. She goes to this other planet. Again, I think we get obsessed with originality sometimes, and I have to come up with a completely new idea, something that has never been done at all. Or we also get obsessed with this idea of, plagiarism is wrong. Don't look at someone else's work. Don't take any ideas whatsoever from their work, because that's stealing and that's bad, and you have to be, you got to do it all on your own. I think people can go a little too far in that direction. There's nothing wrong with sort of borrowing the general idea, like I said, The Wizard of Oz, a girl going to a fantasy land of some kind. That's such a general idea that you can't copyright it. It's not stealing. Everyone, can do their own little spin on that basic concept. When you get into the specifics of yellow brick roads and so forth, yes, that is plagiarism. Don't do that. In any case, I think you get the basic idea there. 2 ideas or more, you mixing together different things there's like an alchemy there that you can come up with something completely different by combining different concepts that you've seen in other people's work. Number 6, push yourself out of your comfort zone. Trying something new can get you past creative block. It is sort of interesting. You would think that going into an unfamiliar area would be really hard because you never tried it before, and you might even get extra stuck. But I do think sometimes trying something that you're not used to can get your creative juices flowing. When David Bowie passed away, sadly, earlier this year, I watched a video where he was talking about, the benefits of doing something that you haven't done before. And he had such an interesting way of putting it, of go into the deep end of the pool, I think was what he was kind of saying. Go into the water that's almost too deep for you. And when your feet just don't even touch the bottom anymore, that's when you're just about in the right place, I believe was the way he put it. Get yourself into slightly unfamiliar territory. I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but I do think sometimes when you play it too safe and you're doing something that you've done 100 times before, well, maybe that's why you're not feeling inspired. It's too familiar, So definitely worth trying something new. And the less familiar you are with it, maybe, the better. Number 7. If the current part is no good, push through it and move on to the next part. Now, sounds a little bit like that one of in the middle of the woods, reverse course and go back to where you went wrong. It's a little bit different, though, because sometimes, you know, like when I was working on Brody's Ghost, I came into this fight sequence, and I was like, man, this is not working. I'm not really so good at this. I feel like it's not coming out so great. But I just knew if I can just get through this rough draft version, I'm going to get back to some other scene that flows better for me, that comes more naturally to me as a writer. And so it was sort of key to just push. Sometimes you just have to push through it. It's kind of the opposite of like going back and trying another path. Sometimes if you do feel fairly sure, yes, this is the way, it's not going so well, but, you know, just get through it. Move on to the next thing, and then at some point you can come back and hopefully improve things. But I think inevitably, and I will come back to this idea, you're not going to achieve perfection in every single part of what you're working on. You're going to come to some things that just are not coming out so great. But don't let that halt you in your tracks. Just push through it sometimes, and you'll get to the other side of that rough patch that you're in, and the inspiration will kick back in. It's maybe hard to feel like you're going to get there when you're in the middle of something that's not going so well, but you just have to have a little faith in, you know, what's waiting for you around the corner if you keep at it. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my Micron Prismacolor. No, it's not Prismacolor. Pigmacolor. Let's reverse on this one, guys. Micron. Micron. Oh, boy, getting loopy already here today. I want to start inking this illustration. And I think what I might do is, for the first part of the inking, I might just do this in time-lapse. Bring in Old Man Time-Lapse. Yeah, you better bring me in. You're not even making sense anymore, kiddo. So I'm going to bring in Old Man Time-Lapse. I'm going to do a bunch of inking. Not all of it. Maybe leave a little bit for the last part of the video. But let's go ahead and do that, and I will be right back to continue my pieces of advice. Alright, well, I think I got enough of the inking done to continue with the bits of advice. Hopefully we'll still complete the inking. I know people don't like it when I don't finish the actual artwork by the end of the video. Never fear, we'll make sure that we complete it. So let's go ahead now and move on to number 8. Dedicate your project to someone you know. I'm pretty sure I've never actually used this piece of advice in any of these videos. There's probably some overlap inevitably with some of the other videos I've done in the past, but this one I feel is a new one. As a means of motivating yourself, it can be helpful to feel that the whole project is in tribute to a person, either someone you're going to give it to, or it could even be you know, in memory of someone who has passed away, and you want to pay tribute to them by way of this piece of art or project that you're working on. I would think that could give you motivation. And you know, my latest project called the Drawing Lesson, which I will be talking about probably next week. I'm going to try to give some sort of a sneak preview of that. It's coming out July 5th, but I dedicated that book to my old art teacher, David Small, my mentor back in college. And, you know, I had a contract to create this book, so I don't know if it was so much about motivation, but it sort of informed the book, knowing that I was doing it in honor of him. And certainly, if you don't have a book contract, and you don't have this sort of deadline, official deadline, it may help to, you know, personalize it a bit, and also it's just a nice thing to do. It gives meaning, and you know, if it is for a friend of yours or someone in your family, they will be quite honored, I think, that you dedicated something to them. I think it's one of the nicer aspects of, certainly of creating books, but you know, a song, almost any piece of art can be dedicated to a real person. Let's go on now to number 9. Go back and look at one of your old projects that isn't so great and consider how much you've improved. I think sometimes we're so focused on the here and now, and progress is so incremental that the illusion can be created that we are not making any progress at all. It may be helpful to go back, look especially at something that is not so great. It would be like a little pat on your own back, I suppose, to have a look at it and say, wow, I have definitely improved since I made this thing. So in a way, your past self can serve as a cheerleader for you in a way, motivating you, saying, hey, dude, you're better than I was at this time. Let's move on to number 10 here. Go out and get some fresh air. Physical activity can help you revive your creative abilities. Now, I know this almost sounds like a cop-out, like, oh, what, motivation? Go out and get some fresh air? You sound like my dad or something like that. But, I'm speaking from experience here. If you're just sort of sitting at a desk day after day after day and truly not getting enough exercise, of course, it's not healthy, but also it is probably holding you back creatively. You need to, creativity, all this stuff is connected, your brain, your body, and it may, I'm not saying it all comes down to all you got to do is go out for a jog and you'll come back and you'll be Picasso or whatever. No, it's of course it's not as simple as that. But certainly it is a factor, and it can help. And it might be something that you just have overlooked. So consider that as a possible way of getting past creative block or getting more motivated or just seeing an improvement in your work. Now here's number 11, the longest of them all, and it circles back to something that I was talking about before in terms of when you compare your work to other people. Number 11. If a sense of competitiveness helps you, great. If it doesn't, here's my philosophy. Creativity is not a competition. When other people do good work, they are not beating you. The only person's work you should try to surpass is your own. So I sort of feel like I stepped up on a soapbox there, but it pains me to see people who are, someone else's great work causes them to feel worse about their own work. I know it's a natural thing. But I feel like you gotta push back against that. It's not a competition, guys. It's not a race. When one person wins, that doesn't mean that you lost. It's just not like that, and I would urge you to do whatever you can to stop yourself from falling into that trap, because to me, I think it's the worst of all the traps, all the creative traps that you can fall into, the one in which you are envious and spiteful almost of someone else's good work, or for whatever reason, allowing that to make you feel bad about your work. That's like poison. That's just like mental poison. You gotta somehow get away from that. Easier said than done, I know. But let's go on to the last of these pieces of advice. Number 12, it doesn't have to be perfect. Start with okay, then try to turn it into good. Now, some people might not like the sound of this. It sounds like I'm arguing in favor of mediocrity and not trying very hard. No, absolutely, that's not what I'm saying. You should try hard. You should always be doing your best. All I'm really saying is that perfectionism can get in the way of getting the job done. You want it to be perfect. It isn't perfect, and you throw down the pen in disgust, or the musical instrument, or whatever it is. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, start with okay. And then try to get to good. And if you're lucky, you can get past good to real excellence. But perfection? Nah, I suppose some people can shoot for perfection and get there. But I think for the rest of us mere mortals, we are going to have to settle for good and then hopefully be able to keep working at it until it becomes great. But not everything you do is going to be great. let me tell you. That doesn't mean you give up and stop working, though. I feel like I'm almost at the end of the video here. I'm certainly at the end of the pieces of advice. Let me go grab my books so that I can thank anyone who has supported me by getting them. We got Brody's Ghost, the collected edition. It's out there, folks. Hope you can get it. This is Miki Falls, my other graphic novel series. The Realism Challenge, my book about hyper-realistic illustration, and, of course, mastering manga and mastering manga, too. I really do greatly appreciate the people who support me by getting those books. But I know that there are many of you out there saying, don't forget the blushies. I'm going to do it in pencil here, guys, because I'm probably going to do this later on with computer coloring. But lest I offend the blushy-loving public, I'll go ahead and put them in here in pencil. Well, let me go ahead and pick up the pen and lay it down. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.